All right, making a video today on Skidoo 900 turbo intercoolers, and I'm talking about today G4 sleds, basically anywhere up from a 2019 into your 900Rs before we went into the G5 platform. So the intercooler in front of you is a 900R intercooler, and I'm going to be putting this in later on, and as we get into winter, into my 2021 900 turbo, which does not have this intercooler. Now, the reason I want to do that is because as the engine management basically controls your power output on your sled, as you have higher horsepower applications, where mine has a tune in it where I'm running an advertised 195 horsepower. Some days, basically, because of your intake air temperature, and outside air also plays a huge role in this. Some days the sled will have amazing top speed, good power when you're running into, you know, triple digits where you start building a lot of pressure on the nose of the sled, and then you can push a lot of air through the intercooler. Other days, you can see when you're running that kind of power through a stock application, like a stock intercooler, I should say, you will see, the speeds vary, the top speeds vary, 12, 13 miles an hour from one day to the next, and it's all variables, whether it be ambient air temperature, humidity in the air. There's also other variables you can't really control, like your snow conditions. So the intercooler that's coming out of my sled, and I'm sorry I don't have it here right now, but has 10 of these internal air passages in it. So this and this is not, these outside, these are not air passages. It's these interior ones that are the air passages for the intercoolers. Now, through the first generation of the G4 Turbo, there was only 10 of these passages. So with the intercooler being 6 inches across, 2.25 inches deep, you only got, when you factor in, you've got surface area on either side of each one of these ribs. The surface area on the intercooler coming out of my sled, being a regular 900T, would only be 270 square inches of cooling surface on the intercooler. This intercooler out of the 900R has 17 of these air passages, and it is a 1/4 inch thicker than the intercooler. It is 6 inches by 2.5 deep. But with the 17 passages, instead of the 10, you go from 270 square inches of cooling surface all the way up to 510 square inches of cooling surface. You're almost double the cooling surface in this intercooler. That is better than some of the aftermarket offerings as far as cooling surface per square inch. Now, that being said, I'm just throwing information out there because this is information I scoured the internet for and I couldn't really find. I had to literally buy this intercooler and measure it. So you still, at the end of the day, have to move air through the same space. And just because we have almost double the cooling surface doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have double the cooling. We still have to dissipate all that heat out of this surface, or sorry, out of this area, out the back of it, to get as low as possible intake temperatures here to try and get our top performance out of our engines from these intercoolers. But the reason I felt that this was a good choice for me was, one, my boost level is probably fairly comparable to a stock 900R, and one, this thing costs literally less than half of anything in the aftermarket world where they start in price. But I would suggest, or just like I said, I'd like to throw out information and just say that these intercoolers, and I could not find information on it, have a ton of cooling area that the first generation 900T was missing out on. This intercooler, I think, is a fairly good overachiever than what the first generation was. So, if you're shopping for intercoolers, and I'm not saying go out and buy this, because I'm going to put it in the sled and I'm going to see how it runs. you know, I obviously expect it's going to be improved on some level. Like, it would be crazy not to think it's going to not improve. But you know, look at your intercoolers. If like, I'm not saying buy a Skidoo one if you're running higher horsepower applications where you modify your sled going into the 200 horsepower range. This is probably not going to be adequate for what you want to do. And there's some pretty wild intercoolers out there. But look at them. Pull your tape measure and measure them, see what you get. But anyways, there you go. That's the information that I couldn't find when I was trying to research these 900R intercoolers. And now you know that a 900T intercooler has 270 square inches of cooling surface, and this one has 510 square inches of cooling surface, which is pretty substantial. So we'll put her in about a month and a bit, and we'll see what it does on the lake.